and then what happened?
Well, I was only in one, to tell you the truth. I've always been the kind of person who liked to be surrounded by the same people for a long period of time. Unfortunately, that has not been my fate in life. I've skipped and hopped from one thing to the next, but I had one band for a long time, a band called Elf, and that was a band that was the first one I had. I was together with it for about 6 years, and from there it was with Richie, with Blackmore.
Blackmore's Rainbow.
Yeah.
But now, did Elf have an album out?
We had 3 albums out, yeah.
All right. What label was that?
The first one was on WIPX. The next 2 were on MGM.
Okay.
All of those albums were produced by the bass player who was then in Deep Purple, Roger Glover.
Uh-huh.
And again, the tie-up with Deep Purple again. We did about 8 worldwide tours with Purple.
Okay, now it's all coming back to me. I think you guys played in Milwaukee
That's right.
before a Deep Purple show one
That's
time.
right. It was Deep Purple, ELO, and ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Small
then,
world, huh?
yeah. So then you picked up with Blackmore's Rainbow.
That's right. Richie and I started that band after he decided he wanted to leave Deep Purple. He told me that he was dissatisfied with what he was doing at the time, that the band, he felt Deep Purple was becoming a bit too, quote, funky, unquote. That was his term. And he didn't want to go in that direction, so he wanted to put his own band together. So he and I formed the basis for it, and then we acquired Cozy Powell after we had done the first album, and then that band stayed together as the nucleus with Cozy, myself, and Richie for just about 5 years, and then I left to do the Sabbath thing.
Yeah. Now, how did your hookup with Sabbath come about?
Well, as I say, I left Rainbow. I had been out of the band for about 6 months, and I was kind of deciding what I was going to do next with my life. Not my life, but with my career. And I know what I'm going to do with my life. Let's live it, by the way. I was deciding whether it should be a solo career or whether I'd like to do what I've always done, which is play with other musicians, bounce off them, and be in, again, a steady working organization. And Tony Iommi called me and said that he was thinking of perhaps getting out of the Sabbath thing, that they were having a bit of trouble with Ozzy, and it came to a head, and he wanted to, Tony and I were going to put a band together. Ozzy left. I met with Terry and Bill, the drummer, Terry, the bass player, and we got along really famously in a personal manner, and then we had a little play, and it was great, and so we said, well, we don't have to think of a new name, yeah, let's do it. So we kept Black Sabbath together.
All right. Well, let's play a song.
All right.
All right. You want to talk about this one we're going to do?
This was the last track that we wrote and recorded. This one was recorded and written in Paris. It was the only track that we did in Paris. We did it under extreme duress. The studio was absolutely abysmal, but we had a great producer and a great engineer who got us through it all. And this was, as I say, the last one, Neon Nights.
All right. Black Sabbath on LPX. Black Sabbath, and I do have Ronnie James Dio in the studio. We'll be continuing talking here in just a minute. Just a reminder that the LPX, just when we were talking before, you mentioned, I said, well, you know, how long are you going to have? You got to go to a sound check. Now you say you got the touring down so well that you don't have to do
we
a
really
sound
have
check.
it down. We've been on the road since April. We've had only, I think, about 2 weeks off, I mean, in block form in all of that time. And our crew and ourselves know exactly what's going to happen every night. It's gotten to the point where some of the shows, because we fly in late, there's not time for sound check, so you kind of have to get it down early in the tour so that if you can't do a sound check, you don't really blow it. And we've got it down, so no problem with the sound check.
God, and on your days off, like, let's say you have, like, a couple of days between gigs, like, what do? Do you fly back home and hang out a little bit, or do you just kind of stay in the city where you're at, or?
If it's close, we would consider flying to our various homes. Usually it's not very close, so we'll probably use one of those days to fly to the next city, which makes it really not a day off because it's spent most of the time in the airport. And the next day is usually on a Sunday, the next day off, where everything is closed. All the bars, of course, are closed, and that's really the only relaxation we get is to go in the bar and have a drink, I think. But our days off are spent in the town where we have the day off, and hopefully it'll be a big town. But again, usually it's Bangor, Maine, or Billings, Montana, you know, so something very insane like that.
Well, Ronnie, I'm interested. Did you have any formal voice training or anything like that?
No, I never have. Not that I wouldn't suggest that people who want to go that route do it, but for me, I've always felt that it would take away the naturalness that's mine, perhaps the uniqueness that's mine. I've been approached by people early on in my career who have said, I knew a great voice instructor. Well, I either took that as an extreme insult because they felt that I needed one, or told them the truth, which was that I didn't want to get involved with someone changing what I am, my naturalness. But no, I've never had any formal vocal training at all. I've been a musician for a long, long time. I think that's very important to have musical knowledge with... you can't just be a singer. I don't think not these days. There's too much competition out there.
Mm-hmm. So you're pretty much a self-taught musician, would you say?
No, oddly enough, I started as a trumpet player when I was about 7 years old, and I played for a long, long time. And so I've had...
School bands and all that?
Yeah, the whole thing. I played in the marching band, and I marched up and down between halves of football games and all that. You know,
oh, yeah.
Froze my lips off when it was too cold. But that was, good formal training for me. And then after that, I threw the trumpet away into the nearest river I could find and picked up a guitar and a bass and carried on from there.
Yeah. So you were pretty much grown up and weaned on rock and roll?
Yes, that's right.
What would you say are some of your favorite rock and roll artists that you grew up with and still, what do you listen to today?
Well, Paul McCartney has always been one of my all-time favorite people in all the world because, for a start, he's a survivor. I like that the most about him, I think, where the rest of them have had their little flings at careers. He, to me, is the only one who's really done it in a big way and has had a lot of success with it. I think as a vocalist, he's can do anything. He's a chameleon. He's changes colors with everything. I love him for that. I think he's a great musician. I think he's, again, of the self-taught school, which I admire him for. Enough about Paul McCartney. As a singer, I don't think anyone can really touch the technical expertise of Stevie Wonder. I think that he can do no wrong as a singer. I admire him very much. Of course, I can't take anything from Stevie because I don't sound like him at all, and I'm glad I don't because there's only one Stevie Wonder. As vocalists go, Paul Rodgers has been always one of my favorite vocalists.
Bad Company, right?
Free were a big influence on my life. There are so many, I like so many, but those three I think would be, have had an influence. I think perhaps one other, which is kind of off the wall, is Paul Simon. I think Paul Simon, again, is a brilliant songwriter, lyricist, and fine singer, musician.
I just saw him Monday night in Los Angeles at this convention I went
could have
to.
been with you.
It was very good.
Good.
Yeah.
I like him a lot.
Were you ever into the Beatles?
Oh yeah, they were my favorites. Yeah. I didn't mean to neglect the Beatles by just giving just due to Paul McCartney because John Lennon has always been one of my favorites as well. But in comparing the two, I think McCartney has to get my all-time vote. But yeah, I love the Beatles. I've done so many Beatles songs in bars I can't even recount all the times. Yeah. Great.
Well, there was, I think on 2020 a few weeks ago, there was this big deal on Paul McCartney. They did a special thing.
See it.
And I think that he got some kind of an award for selling more records than any other artist in the world or something like that. That is very heavy.
Incredible. Yes, it is. Yeah. He seems to have himself sorted out. That's what I like about him. Yeah. His life. He seems to be happy with what he's doing, even though he's been criticized for his marital choice. That's his own choice, and he sticks by it. And I think he's been proven right. It was a wise choice for him. And again, I just appreciate what he's done with his life.
Yeah.
I hope I'm as fortunate.
Yeah. What about your songwriting process? Now, I see all these songs are written by everybody. How do you kind of get all that together in a studio or something? Or?
No, well, what we did on this one, you just come from L.A., so you know about Bel Air. Bel Air is a very flashy residential area in Los Angeles. Yes. Posh to a fault.
I mean, chain gates and everything.
Exactly. You don't walk in Bel Air. You can't walk the streets because that is the first sign to the police that you don't belong there.
Right.
But we rented a home in Bel Air, and I didn't mention Bel Air to make people think that we're flash and that we're spending a lot of money, only that we happened to do it in Bel Air. And we had a studio built in the garage, and we used that for part of our writing process. The other was done just sitting around in the lounge in the living room with guitars and a microphone and a little tiny amplifier, and got it done, and then honed them to perfection in that studio, and then took them to the studio and even did more to them in the studio before we physically put them down on tape. And that was our writing process. Even though we give 100% credit to everyone, different people do different things. I wrote all the lyrics on this particular album. Geezer Butler wrote most of the lyrics on the past albums. Tony and I did a lot of the musical writing on this one, and even though it was done piecemeal by different people, we felt democratically, and to keep the band together, it's really best to give total credit to everyone. That way you don't get egos flashing and bouncing away from each other.
Yeah.
But that was our process.
Yeah. Now, this is the first time that Black Sabbath is going to be in town with a new lead singer. How has the tour gone so far and the reception to you and the band?
It's gone very well. I know that that's a question that is in a lot of people's minds. It was in our minds when we first started. We went in the deep end. We did an English tour first, and we played in Birmingham, which is the hometown of Black Sabbath. And that was the one that was the stickiest for everyone, except for me. I don't know why. It didn't bother me at all. If there were going to be people who brought up the name Ozzy, well, then that's up to them. If they weren't pleased with me and Black Sabbath, well, that's too bad as well. I really don't care. I'm me. I'm not Ozzy. I'm not replacing Ozzy. I'm in Black Sabbath. And our goal is to maintain and prolong the legend that is Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath is a band. It's not Ozzy Osbourne. It's not Tony Iommi. It's not Geezer Butler. It's not Ronnie James Dio. It's Black Sabbath. In answer to your question, there only twice that I can think of was there even anyone who mentioned where's Ozzy. Again, I think that speaks very well for the band and not for the difference between Ozzy and myself. We've had no problem at all. Not a bit. Of course, tonight someone will throw a dagger at me and I'll die, right?
No, but I mean, as far as I can tell, this is the heaviest reception I've ever seen to a Black Sabbath album.
Yes, it's been the most successful, as a matter of fact.
Right.
It's been.
I think that says a lot.
I think it does. I think it also made a great difference that I came from the same place that Black Sabbath comes from. I mean, having been a heavy metal singer for all of my career, and having been a heavy metal songwriter for all of my career, and being accepted working with Richie in Rainbow and all that, I think it made it a lot easier for the transition. If I had just been someone off the street, it would have been very difficult. I don't envy